Hi. So this is the day that the 1995 St. Stephen's batch reunion commences. I'm boycotting it. I'm boycotting it to express my disappointment that my batchmates have not engaged in the what is happening in India right now under the Modi regime, which is communalizing our society and undermining our democratic ethos and its institutions. I have suggested through this podcast, of which this is the fifth part, that to my batchmates that we meet for a debate, and I welcome anyone who supports the Modi regime to come and make their case, because even the sight of educated people being involved in what is happening in India and expressing their differences of opinion in an informed and sober, rational way that educated people are supposed to interact is a very important and necessary example that our country needs at this stage. And such a debate, such a conversation could perhaps then lay the ground for a more organized and long-term involvement on the part of the batch of 1995 in what is happening in our country. However, except for one batchmate who got in touch, I have not heard back from anyone. Um, and I continue to hold out hope. At least I continue to hope that uh, this intervention on my part is at least going to prod people to start thinking about what is happening and what kind of response this moment demands. And I mean, one day, and when the regime comes after me and does what it does to those that oppose it, I hope that you will at least then be moved to look at what I'm saying and why I am willing to give everything to this fight, and why have been trying to urge you to do the same. Uh, I'm going to read out to you something that I found on the history of St. Stephen's College, which I think is very relevant to this moment today. It is a letter which Professor C.B. Young wrote in the St. Stephen's magazine, which later was renamed as the Stephanian, in July 1920. It was an editorial about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. He says, these columns, as a rule, do not engage in current political controversy. As a public institution, it is our duty to avoid taking sides on strictly political issues. And where we touch politics at all, we endeavor to deal with them in the spirit of impartial students rather than in that of partisans. It is only because they matter to our mind concerns ultimate of principle rather than mere party politics, and raises profound moral issues, that we find it our duty in this number of the magazine to express our opinion in the subject which more than any other is engaging public attention at the moment. We are in empathic agreement with the condemnation bestowed on the action of General Dyer by all the authorities who have pronounced judgment in connection with the Hunter Committee of Inquiry. This was the committee which was set up to inquire into the Jallianwala Bagh incident and the days leading up to it. We rejoice especially at the strong and unequivocal repudiation by the imperial government, through the mouth of the Secretary of State, of the principles enunciated and followed by General Dyer. With the purely political issues dealt with in the report, the necessity of martial law and the existence or non-existence of open rebellion, we have less concern. They are questions of interpretation of fact, on which opinions may differ without reproach. But as Christian missionaries, we cannot avoid the duty of forming and expressing a judgment on such a deed of horror as the slaughter in Jallianwala Bagh. The former plea has a sinister history. It was Satan, according to Milton. With necessity, the tyrant's plea excused his devilish deeds. And after him was the German Chancellor, Bethmann Hollweg, who defended the invasion of Belgium on the ground that necessity knows no law. The second line of defense equally ignores the moral issue. If it could be proved that General Dyer by his actions saved the Punjab as has been claimed, we would still not withdraw a word that we have written. Better 1,000 times in our view if India were lost to the British Empire than preserved only by such methods. The idea of an India held for England only by naked and ruthless force is one that no follower of Jesus Christ can consistently tolerate for an instant. We believe it to be so entirely out of the relation of the facts. The links which bind India and England together are of more nobler and durable material than brutal might. But it is with principles rather than facts that we are here concerned, and with principle we repudiate with detestation a policy based on a belief in the continuing efficacy of blood and iron. So there you have it. This is what it means to take a moral position when one is required. And this is what it means to recognize a moment for being above mere politics, for being much more important and urgent and dangerous than what everyday politics demands. And in the spirit of this letter, which is even today on the history of the St. Stephen's website, I think that all you Stephanians of the 1995 batch need to reflect on your own personal, to what extent have you been able to meet this ideal in your life and in the context of what is going on in India today. Even if you are someone who supports the regime and believes that what is happening in India today is good for India and good for her future, it is incumbent upon you, even more so, to engage with people like me who are extremely worried about what is happening, concerned, don't see any good and only a terrible, terrible night of darkness ahead, and feel threatened enough that they are having to counsel themselves and prepare themselves and their families for whatever is going to come to them, whether it's jail or torture or being killed. If this is an overestimation of the situation, then there's all the more reason for you to engage with people like me and explain to us how we are wrong, and to do so publicly so that people can see and themselves be assured or themselves make an assessment of whether this is right or wrong. And what also happens with engagement is that while in the heat of discussion, it is very rare for anyone to concede a point. I do believe that when we go back to our own places and when the heat of the moment has cooled down, we do reflect on what the other person has said. We talk about it to those who are of our point of view. They talk about it to others. Our children hear us discussing these things, and in this way, a better understanding is reached and better responses and solutions are found for whatever we face. And it's immoral for any of you at this point to shirk your duty in this regard. I'm, thinking back on my batchmates and looking at what they have done in their lives. And to take a rather obvious and almost trite example, this regime and the people that support it are attacking, call English-speaking, English-educated, people who were educated at St. Stephen's College as being children of Macaulay, as being the foot soldiers of the colonial regime, of having a colonial and westernized mentality even after we were freed. And they are also attacking the English language. And you know what I want to say to all of you, and most of you are flying in from Anglophone countries. If it wasn't for this English language, would you have made the millions that you're making today? Would you have been able to settle your families over there? And while there was a lot of criticism, I remember when I was at college on India's socialism, it was also, this was the time, 1992 to 95 is when we were studying there. This was the time when India liberalized her economy and moved from a planned economy and a very heavily socialist one to essentially an open and liberal market. We have all benefited so much from that. The level, the kind of lifestyle that we enjoy, the kind of disposable income that we have, the kinds of holidays that we can plan for ourselves, I mean, this was not even conceivable in the time of our own parents. We have done so well of every aspect of India, which this regime condemns, denies, and says was harmful for India, and that India only has raised its head with pride now. That, of course, is a statement of everyday politics and not one that I is worth to engage on this scale with you guys with. But in that rejection is also a rejection of the deeper principles that underlay the idea of India and the type of society that was at least the ideal, even if it was not achieved in those days. And as the beneficiary of those ideals, is it not incumbent on you to now come out and speak up? This is my question to you. Because